All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another session of HR Heretics. Hope you are all doing great. We have rescheduled this probably 4 times, mostly because of not you, Baz, but us. And I'm so excited to have you on. So Cynthia Baslamit Shrauner. I didn't know what name to call her because we have Baslamit Baz, we have Shrauner Shrawn. So I'm just gonna stick with the OG Baz. Now, this person I have looked up to since I was like a baby. I was like a toddler wearing diapers at Intuit at 20 years old, being like, "Oh my God, I want to go to Facebook with that." And like this person is so well known, has done so much stuff, and has seen it all. Like great stuff, total disasters and shit shows. But the best part is she wants to talk about it all. And it's just like we do on this show, Nolan. We got nothing to lose. It's real talk, it's real stories, and we're gonna pull it out of you. We're so excited to have you.
I'm excited to be here. I think everything is fair game because the only way you can make things better is share the things you screwed up and share the things you got right. That's what I kind of do. So I'm very excited to be here with the two of you because I've listened to your podcast and I'm excited to be a guest. So thank you.
We're so stoked to have you on. So I want to start with the story you shared last week on LinkedIn. So first of all, you were at Meta for 15 years, and then now you're the head of people at Electric Capital. But you shared a story at Meta about being demoted. And I talk to my friends about this all the time. I'm like, when you're an exec, basically like the only way you leave the building is you get fired. Well, the other thing that has come up in my career that I failed to mention is people do get demoted. Can you share that story with us?
I'd love to share the story with you. When I started at Facebook, it was about 300 people and it was incredible growth. It was 2008. We kept adding people and incumbents who were already in place were the ones who were getting the bigger jobs and hiring people under them. And so fast forward a couple years and I had this large team and it was something I never thought I'd have and I was loving the team aspect of it. I hated the job. I hated running meetings and setting agendas and having to do PC things with other teams and I really just loved the client work. And I'd go to my boss all the time, head of HR. She loved me because I had helped her for years and years. She was a marketer, turned head of recruiting, turned head of HR, and she was needed help and I was always there for her. So she had my back. She grew up under Cheryl's sort of reign of you help them fake it till they make it. Cheryl was always pretty supportive of people that way. Lori did the same for me. And Lori's like, you are not going to fail. Just shut up and stop being a wuss. And I'd go to her at least once a month. And I was like, Lori, I love these parts because we'd always make clients do love, loathe exercises. What do you love and you get your energy from? And what do you loathe and you hate? And I loathed so much of my job. I was like, Lori, here's my list. I hate this shit. I'm really bad at it. She's like, you're not bad at it. You could be better, but don't worry, you're great. And we did this dance for about 2 years. And by then I was director and I had all the scope. And I was so well known in the company because I'm a good HRBP and I'm good at building the relationships but I just didn't love the rest of it, and I was working 16-hour days, and I was drained, and I was so finally one day I go talk to Lori, and I was like, "Here's what we're gonna do, and here's my plan," and she's like, "Well, Baz, we've been talking for 2 years now about you hating your job." And I was like, "Yeah, so?" And she's like, "Well, I think it's now time. I think it's now time to bring someone in over you." And I was like, "Are you firing me?" And she's like, "No, no, no. There's tons of growth here. There's tons of opportunity. We've got a bunch of other recs open. You could do what you love to do, which is run tech. You love running tech. You don't love the business side or the sales side." And I sat there and I was shocked and I was like, "Don't cry. Don't cry. Don't cry." Because like my heart was like, crying and my brain was like, hell yeah, finally. And they were not reconciling. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna walk away for a hot minute. And I went, I cried. And I had taken the shuttle in, so I couldn't even cry in my car. I had to like go cry in a conference room. I think I was in one of the breastfeeding rooms. It was so embarrassing. And I cried and called my husband. I ended up just Ubering home. He was my boyfriend at the time. I called him and I was telling him what happened. He goes, "You've been wanting this, you dumbass." And I was like, "No, no, no. I've been wanting this in my head, but my heart never caught up with my head." So I wasn't there yet. And I was like, "Okay." And I came back, I think a couple days later, because I called in sick. I was like, "I would just be sick for a couple days, feel sorry for myself." I came back and I said, "Let's do the search. This is the right thing. It's going to take me a while to get used to." Told my team about it. And they were wigged out by me. They're like, "Why are you doing this?" And Well, because my team liked me, and the fear of bringing in a new leader, what worked great at Facebook was grooming people internally because you opt into the culture, you understand what works and what doesn't. So there was a little fear, but there was also a little excitement. I could see some people on my team were like, Baz hates doing the pass downs. Baz hates doing the planning. Baz hates doing the 2-year planning and strategy work, and my team loved that. My team needed, and frankly, they needed it. It's not just that they loved it, they needed it to do their jobs because I didn't like it, I would always kick that can down the road. And so we started the search and we looked and we looked and we looked. And I hated all the people we saw. I'm like, fucktard, fucking idiot, fucker, um, and then we meet this one woman, and I come out of the room and I look at Lori, my boss, and Lori's like, "What do you think?" I go, "I'm not gonna say anything till you meet her." Lori comes out and we just high five and we jump up and down like she's the person. And so then I got her set up and I brought her in and everyone met her. She was way better than me at all the parts of the job I sucked at. And it was like a weight was lifted. It was still embarrassing for a while. It was embarrassing. People that I used to manage, people that I used to drive, and they were now my peers. That part didn't bother me because I hired stars, so I knew that they were gonna be my peers. That part didn't bother me, but it I love being the decision maker, I love being the shot caller, and now I was an input. And so that took some getting used to, and then I loved it. And then I was just like, it felt so freeing to focus and go deep and do great work in one area. It took a couple months, but I knew it was the right thing. But when Lori dropped the hammer on me, I was like, for 2 years, you said I could fake it till I make it. And we let other people fake it till they make it all the time. Like, here's 5 other people who aren't being successful in their role. Why me? And she's like, because it's time and we now need it. And yeah, I ended up figuring out what the trigger was for her finally. She never told me what finally turned her 'cause it wasn't Cheryl. Cheryl wanted me to stay in the job. It was another executive who pointed it out to her, and he was a smart guy. I didn't like him, wasn't a fan. And then when I found out it was him, I really fucking hated him. Um, if he was ever on fire in the street, I wouldn't not even pee on him. I'd be like, "Burn, bitch." But it was finally someone internally who had a ton of credibility who's like, "She's great, but she's hurting the growth of the function." And the whole function elevated with Janelle coming in, really did. So and it helped me realize what I love to do, and I just loved going deep in a client group and spending at least 70% of my time with clients. Then I could manage people, then I can coach individuals and make teams better and all that shit, but if I didn't have 70% client work.
Isn't it so good to know, like, what you wanna do? I mean, you said l the loathe, love thing, but and just being clear about what you like doing and actually being free to say it, right? Because a lot of us, I don't know about you both, but we go through our career, we're like, "Well, everything's the job," and no one really says, "Well, you know what?" And I'll speak for myself. I don't like doing L&D stuff. I do not like training. I do not like facilitating large classrooms, like, and yet I did it for so long because you felt like you couldn't say you don't wanna do it. And I just wanna say this, I think now it is totally not taboo to do that, but you did it back when, you didn't really do that. And, this is a real story, it wasn't on our agenda. We don't really have an agenda, but I interviewed to go work with Baz and the team at Facebook. I can't say Meta. I can't say it. I don't know, I can't say it. And I remember, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but paraphrasing, I was young, I was rocking and rolling. I think it was 2011 or 2012, and it was really positive, and yet it wasn't quite the right thing, and some of the feedback came back, and it was like, "Well, you kinda have a reputation for, like, too much of the client or too much of the." I don't know, I'm paraphrasing, but maybe entrepreneurial spirit or breaking rule, and I'm like, "Yeah, that's what I like to do," and I found my niche and venture where you get thrown out of the building unless you are like that. And I realize now I probably wouldn't have been happy there or would have done as well. So it's so interesting. And yet I remember I cried in like a hallway and a bathroom. I was like, they don't like me. It's like, no,
These
it's
are
okay.
classic ego stories, right? Like, that's what we're describing right now is
Yeah, I was in there. I went through the Paradise, Janelle, and all of it.
yeah, I mean, so my version of this was at DoorDash, and I was working with Brett Record, who was the head of talent at Sequoia at the time, and Brett said something to me as kind of like a big foreshadow in my career. He said, Nolan, there's early stage people and there's late stage people. You got to figure out which one you are. And I was like, the fuck? Like, you're not going to put me in a box, dude. Like, I can be any of this stuff. And it turns out, like, once, it's like the same thing with people managers. My joke on people management is everybody wants to manage people until they do. And then they're like, oh my God, there's all this other shit outside of like, yeah, my paycheck's a little bit bigger because like our ego is driving us to have a bigger title, a bigger paycheck, more notoriety, more followers on LinkedIn. When like once you actually get kind of comfortable with yourself, you can be honest about the things that you don't like and then figure out like how to solve for those things.
Hey everyone, we'll be right back in a moment after a word from our sponsors. Your workforce is your organization's greatest strength and often its largest single expense. But without the right tools, understanding where your workforce spend is going or how it impacts your bottom line can be a challenge. That's where Planful comes in. With Planful, HR and finance teams get the clarity they need to make smarter workforce decisions, gain real-time visibility into workforce fluctuations, forecast with confidence, and adjust talent acquisition plans collaboratively based on costs today and into the future. No more guesswork, just data-driven insights to help you plan with accuracy. And the best part, Planful is fast and easy to implement, so you can be up and running in weeks, not months, with minimal IT support. Plus, as your company grows, Planful grows with you, providing endless runway for strategic workforce planning at any scale. Ready to take your workforce planning to the next level? Join over 1,500 organizations already using Planful. Visit planful.com/heretics to learn more.
I must admit, I used to believe that AI didn't actually exist in recruiting or HR. That is until my friend Heather Doche, who leads talent at Signalfire, told me to check out Metaview. I got into the product and was like, wow, AI actually does exist in recruiting, and this product is sick. Metaview is the world's #1 AI scribe built specifically for recruiting. Their AI records and transcribes hiring conversations, like intakes, interviews, and debriefs, then provides perfectly summarized notes of everything that was discussed. I've seen firsthand how tough it can be to extract consistently high-quality data from candidate conversations. I've been in debriefs where interviewers told us about their feelings instead of what actually happened in the interview. And I've seen VPs and CEOs block hires because they didn't learn anything from skeleton scorecards. Metaview changes everything. With perfect notes from every conversation, your people can focus on creating a human connection with candidates, and they can save time on the busy work of cleaning up notes after every interview. But it's so much more than just a time saver, because perfect notes means perfect data. For every candidate and every pipeline, hiring teams can make confident, informed decisions, and talent leaders can finally take control of the interview process. Metaview covers all your compliance needs, works with all your existing tools, and takes less than 3 minutes to set up. Join talent leaders at organizations like Brex, Deal, HelloFresh, and Quora, and check out Metaview. Head over to metaview.ai/heretics to talk to one of Metaview's product experts. Tell them that me and Kelli sent you. Or you could just go to their website and get started for free. You'll be up, running, and AI-enabled in minutes. So like, how did you go through that ego exercise, Baz? Because that thing is still hard, I think, for most people.
It got easier because I actually demoted myself a second time a couple of years later when I hired Christine Ellis. I'll tell you that story in a minute because that's hilarious because she's money. For me, there was a cost to the time, like my mental health was taking a toll. And my parents were immigrants to the US. They came, my dad when he was 6, and then my mom when she was 15. And every time they would see me, for us, families first. And they're like, "What is wrong with you? You know, you have no children." And I was like, "Well, first I need a man to have kids. Like, I ain't got nothing going on, mom." Like, and they were yelling at me all the time, like, "All you do is work. You look like shit. And how come you haven't brought us grandbabies?" And I was like, "Just shut up. There's more to life than getting married and having kids." But I also realized I also wanted those things. And what was happening was I was working 7 days a week and I was only getting I was get all my satisfaction in life was coming through work, neglecting friendships, neglecting families. It was just kind of lonely. And when this started happening, because at Facebook we really did support the lean into your strengths and do what you love. So I had participate. And I hate L&D stuff. I think most L&D trainings are fucking garbage, with the exception of a few, like situational leadership's good, crucial conversations. But I actually kind of like Strengths Finder too, because I was like, I'm an action person. I'm not like always the most strategic. And I love doing the work to solve the problems. And the more I kept doing that stuff, I was like, what my job needs is more of what I don't have. Like, I'm not one of those people who could look out 2 years from now and be like, these 17 things are going to happen. I could look out 6 months and do it. Janelle was the person who could look out the 2 years. And that's what the firm needed because we were going hyper growth. So part of it was, and I know this sounds cheesy, I didn't want to let the team down. I don't want to let the company down. I loved Facebook. I was sucking that Kool-Aid through that straw all day. So to me, it was like company first, team first, me second. And I still knew there was opportunity for me. My first couple of years there were a lot of people getting layered, and I had had the conversation with them over and over. There's still a ton of growth. There's still an opportunity. Just because it's not this job doesn't mean it's not this one. And I believed it. So when I was saying that stuff to people, I wasn't lying to them. I didn't feel like I actually believed it. We're growing. We averaged like 30% growth year over year the first 10 years I was there. So there's plenty of opportunity. And so I think what got me there was maybe I can find the job that actually makes me happy and I can still get to work here. And that's what happened. So when it happened the first time and it worked out so well, tech then started ballooning and getting super big. And I was like, and it started turning into that Janelle role. I was like, shit, it's happening again. And I can't do that. And I've now already been here this long. I'm going to quit unless I can rescope a little more and get a little more focused. So I hired Christine Ellis and I told her this is the job that she declined me the first time. She said no. And I was like, what the fuck? I'm offering you this beautiful job to run all of Tech HR and I would be one of your employees. I'm amazing. People would die to have me work for them. Are you like, I'm amazing. What's your problem? And the team's great because I hired them. Like, I'm handing you the golden goose. She said no to me. I was pissed. And I had just had my second kid at this point. And I remember I was sitting with my kid at home on mat leave, and I was like, no, fuck her. So I called her back and I was like, you said no to me and you're coming because you're going to be my person now and we're going to make this happen. And she's like, okay, I'll come. And she ended up, turns out Jay Parikh, that the guy who also ran Infra, also called her and sort of like browbeat her a little bit. She came and the goal was she reports to me for about a year and then we would flip. And every month I was like, "Are you ready? Are you ready?" Because now that I had tasted it the first time and saw how much happier I was and job satisfaction and still growth and opportunity, I was just a greedy, greedy person. I wanted to have that cake and I wanted to lick it and eat it twice. I was just and so because it worked out so well the first time, I did it again a couple of years later and still worked out great. I still ended up hitting my D2 and hit VP and had great scope and great impact. But now I was part of this wonderful team of people where it was just because of Christine Ellis, like she built this well-trusted team of people and it worked great. But once I tasted it, had to have it again. I wasn't going to not have it again.
So what were the commonalities of the person that came in to ultimately like win your trust and the team's trust? Because that tends to be like a big blocker. So when you talk to the stereotypical early stage person who doesn't like who can't scale to like the late stage person, then we have to like start interviewing. That person gets on the interview panel, and almost every case that person's like, nope, nobody's good enough, right? It's like impossible to like satisfy them. So what was true of those interviews and those experiences, and then you reporting to those people that ultimately made it successful?
I would say something that's very consistent with both of them is they're both data led. And we have to be data, and it's no, data doesn't come naturally for I could barely spell data, but they were both data led. So we had to take those learnings to make things better. They were also both, and I'm doing their technical skills first, and then I'll go to the heart of what you're saying. But they were also systems level thinkers. They were both the people who could sit there and be like, this is what's going to happen in 2 years because they could see the data and they could see this thing, which were both very opposite of what my strengths were. So those two things were true. But then they want feedback from people. They knew that the best solutions we could create were all bottoms up and top down. So they weren't command and control leaders. They didn't be like, we could see this 2 years out. Now everyone do it. It was like, here's what we're thinking. What's your guys' input? What are we missing? What are the gaps? So we built things very collaboratively. high level of trust, high level of integrity. And I mean, Kelly, you know Christine, like she's her caliber and just Christine especially leads with actually Janelle leads with kindness too, but Christine leads with a high level of integrity. She really cares about people, but she's still going to give you the feedback. And there was a high level of care for the HR team and building a really, really strong HR community. Christine was very much, you couldn't get anything done at Meta or Facebook unless you can work cross team collaboratively. That was their bread and butter. Both of them were about bringing people together. I mean, you can easily get cutthroat and catty. Like at Yahoo, and I was at Yahoo, I was like, that team sucks and that team's poo poo. And here it was like, how do we uplift the whole? How do we make them better? If they do suck, how can we help make them better? Enough so that we didn't have to like, if they were really bad, obviously, we would take corrective action, but if they were good and they were just lacking context, why wouldn't we wanna help them? So there was this, we're in it together, we're one team, and it sounds cheesy. Christine Ellis gave a shit about people's opinions. If she thought they were wrong, she would tell them they were wrong, so high level of honesty and integrity, but I knew that every time I hired someone like that, I was making the team better, also by bringing in a different skill set. Because what I will say is what they were great at, I wasn't. What I was great at, they were not. If you were gonna throw someone in front of a client, you're gonna throw me in front of the client because I can speak the language and I had the credibility there, but I couldn't figure out what HR needed to build for 2 years out. And it bugged me because for a while I was like, "I'm gonna learn it. I'm gonna learn to be just like them so I could be well-rounded." Nope, I couldn't. And I mean, even if I could, which I bet you I could have done like 50 to 70% of it just drained me and it took too much energy and it just didn't feed my soul. And I already had all this, I was greedy. I had all this stuff that already fed my soul and they were offering it to me. Why would I spend my time on this other shit that didn't feed me when I could just be greedy and do the stuff that I love to do and I'm so great at and have a lot of impact in?
I'm gonna just say something very directly because if I'm listening to this, I could say, well, this is great. I can just fire myself and demote myself and pick my job and do things I only love to do. And great. The world's fucking awesome. The real talk about that is not everyone has the right to do that. And I think I just would love your reactions on that because I don't think you can actually do that unless you have performed immensely well, unless you are trusted and respected in an organization, unless you've made such great impact that people would do anything but let you leave. And I think that that can be missed and kind of maybe overlooked when it's just like, yeah, I'm going to do this and I'm going to pick my stuff, but it's not that easy. You make it sound very easy.
You never see it. You're totally right, Kelly. Like you never see it for those reasons. Plus, internally, there's this back channel conversation that's happening behind your back. And when you've been there, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and it sucks. But you know what's going on, you know people are chirping about you, and so that makes you feel like they don't love me anymore. And sometimes, like, maybe they don't. Sometimes, like, those conversations just aren't nuanced because oftentimes when you're in these companies, you're dealing with immature leaders.
And that's why you have to be very sure if you're someone that's going to do this. Like I did it at Pendo, and I went through the same thing. I took myself out of the job. It was an IC and very clear, but I still had some heart and head reconciliation after it becomes real. You're like, "Oh shit, so much has happened." And it's funny because even though you did great, you're well respected, I could still tell, like, some people's questions, "Hey, what happened? Did you" I'm like, you know what I mean? So and it doesn't matter what people think, but it matters that you have to be very clear and confident around that because people will always think that you got fired or you got, like, demoted.
That did hurt my feeling. I want to answer Nolan your question first, then I'm going to go Kelly to your question. But Nolan to your question, I think I'll say part of it was I did perform well and that's why they did it. But it was also because Meta was growing at 30% a year. Most companies aren't growing at a 30% a year clip. So we had the luxury of doing stuff like that. And we had done it so many times with so many people that when it happened to me, I was like, I've talked people through this and now it's happening to me. I got to talk myself through it. And I did 3 days of crying later. But that's why I was lucky because the company was going fast growth. But I did have a good reputation. And that's why they wanted to be able to keep both. But what I will say is, ever since I did that post, I've got a lot of inbound on LinkedIn, just people telling me, "Hey, I'm struggling with this as well. What do you think?" Sometimes you can't do it at your own company. Sometimes you have to go to a new company to do it, which is scary if your company doesn't allow you to do that. Or for me, I know people were talking about me. I used to be in meetings I didn't get to go to anymore. Now Janelle was in those meetings, and that bummed me out because I knew I could still add a lot of value there because I had the relationships. So it wasn't that I woke up 3 months later and I was happy. I was still jelly monster so many times where I'd be like, I would have nailed that conversation. And sometimes they would still invite me in as a guest. And I was like, a guest?
Yeah, yes, the guest invites are the best.
I was, some of those things just devastate you when you get kicked out of the meetings when you're like, I was good enough last week and I'm not. And for a while, I still had to prop up those leaders to make them successful. And I did it because I wanted them to be successful because I didn't want to go back to that job. But the ego hurt for it. It hurt less the second time when I hired Christine because I was like, now that I've tasted it, I'm happy. The first time I was like, I don't get to go to those meetings. I don't get to attend Lori Goler's executive staff meeting anymore because I'm not a direct report anymore. I've now been layered and regulated to this group. It wasn't easy, and people did talk. People were like, Baz, what's going on? And then they would meet Janelle and kind of figure it out. And I was like, I'm not good. So then I just started talking about it. It was kind of healing for me to tell people the story internally. So when people would bring it up, I'd be like, well, here's where I wasn't doing a good job. Here's where I think I was doing a really great job. And this is what the company needed. I couldn't get us there, and or if I did, it would have been too late, and that's not what the company needs. Like, my job was coaching leaders on building healthy orgs. So if I was the hypocrite in the way of stopping people at from building their healthy HRBP org, then what kind of leader am I, right? And so, yeah, my husband's like, "Oh, you're such a fucking idealist, drinking the Kool-Aid." Yeah, I am a bit of an ideal. I But at Facebook, I did feel like I drank the Kool-Aid. I love that I loved it, so I didn't love it. But I really was aligned with what the company was doing and what we were trying to do, and I worked with people who had such a great true north. There were very few assholes early on at Facebook, so everyone you worked with was just trying to do goodness, and it infects you. Like, it infects you, so you wanna do that, and yeah, it hurt. The ego hurt a really, really I have a big ego. I'm not gonna leave my ego at the door. Look at me, I got big hair, I got big ego, gotta take it with me everywhere I go, and so but then I realized the cost of my ego wasn't worth the cost of my happiness. I got a lot happier after that exercise. It just felt better.
It's just like a case study in self-awareness. And what's really interesting is by explaining to other people who are asking you about it, you're kind of like reaffirming it in your head. You're like, it's like re-explaining to you, and you're like, yeah, like I believe myself on this, right? Because your ego is always chirping at you. With my son, we have this thing we call it like good Kevin and bad Kevin, like on each of his shoulders. And I'm like, dude, like this is all within us. Like these voices compete within our heads, and it just takes such a level of maturity. I mean, Kelly, how we've been doing this for 2 years. This is like the best story I've ever heard. Like this is such a dope story, Bass.
It's really good because this is the truth of how it works. We spend our time a lot. We talk. I mean, come on, real talk. We talk about all the tech stuff and the echo chamber and all the shit. And the truth is, there's a lot outside of all that that also matters. And a lot of people I coach, we talk about you forget about those things until you reach a certain level of maturity or age or shit happens in life. You know what I mean? And then other things become more important, and I think, like, the Jerry Maguire Quan, like, is having both in a balanced manner, that is the best. And a lot of people, they never get there because they're so ego, or they don't realize that there's other things, or they're so wrapped. It's very easy, like you said, your mom you're working all the time. It's so easy to do that. We've all been there, but I think the trick of this whole thing is to love tech and also love other things and try to balance them together. I don't think you can do that without relationships, trust, credibility, and actually executing well in your role.
And to not play the comparison game. It's so easy to look and be like, well, Johnny over there is, VP of HR. Like, I feel like I'm smarter than John, but, like, he's got other things going on in his life, and he cares about other things, and that's why the old saying, "Comparison is the thief of joy," I think is so true. Like, your mother holding up that mirror to you, right? And, like, because like, it really like, our parents know, right? Like, my parents, like, see within my soul on shit, and they say things to me, I'm like, "Fuck, no, I don't wanna hear that." And in fact, like, sometimes you need to hear it, and that's where, like, family and friends are the most important things because they actually know your authentic self, and they can call your bullshit and make sure that, like, you are following your true north, and that's what your mom did. What a sick story.
And if you can get that in a tech company, if you can get as much as that, it's awesome. I've had it a few times, and it's the best thing.
It felt so good. The comment, Nolan, you just made about comparison, it kept happening to me even after I got demoted. Like, I would keep doing that. "Well, I'm better than that person, what?" And then I'd have to, like, check myself. So it wasn't like a joyous journey once the demotion happened. It wasn't like life's all peaches and unicorns now. I'd still see people get promoted. I'm like, "That person's a dumbass. Talk about fake it till you make it, and they still haven't made it, and you still promoted them." So stuff like that would happen, those inequities that still would eat away at me. And so it didn't just go away because my ego didn't miraculously go away because I still now, I don't even at the firm anymore, and I still know how awesome I am. So that part didn't go away, but that comparison killed people internally. I'd have engineers come to me they had their partner and they had their life and they had their community, and they would come to me and be like, "Baz, I started the same time that person did. How come he's a director now? How come she's a VP now?" And I was like, "But you're doing great at your job and you're super happy." "Well, yeah, but look at them. They're making more money than me and they've got the bigger title and they're sitting at the Mark meetings, Cheryl meetings, and I'm not." And I was like, "Well, if you want that, we can create that path for you. First, you got to figure out if you want that." 80% of the time they didn't want it. 20% they did. 20% of the time they did. They did want a little more. The 80% of the time that they didn't, the only reason they thought they should is because they were doing the comparison thing. And it's so dangerous to do that because that saying you just said is money. It does kill your joy. It really does.
It does. It's a straight thief because you're just on the path, right? And all you can see are the other people getting the things, but you don't, Kelly and I talked about this a couple weeks ago. Is like you don't actually know what's going on behind the scenes. Your point was like working 7 days a week. Some people are wired for that thing, right? Like I'm not. I got to that realization a couple years ago. I'm not wired for that thing anymore. I actually think my story that I tell myself now, I've aged out of it. Like, and I think that happens to a lot of people too. But it's just, and this is, I think, the real work of HRBP. And I think we actually, Kelly, I think this is like the real meat of like where this role is super valuable inside of organizations is when you can illuminate things to people that they're not thinking of.
Yes. It's all I do now is try to connect what they're doing every day at this company with, like, joy in their lives. Because when those things are separate, and for me, they've been separate before, it gets real uncomfortable, and it's not sustainable. And the optics of those comparisons, like, you're exactly right, like, you don't know what's happening. I mean, the irony of all this is, like, I know a lot of people that deleted Facebook because they were getting mentally screwed up looking at people's lovely lives on that product and feeling bad.
Yeah. A and to your point, if the joy is connected to the work, then it's not work. I keep telling my kids are like, "Mommy, one day we're gonna work at Facebook like you or Google like Dad." I said, "Or you're gonna find a job or a profession that feeds your soul when you wake up every day, it doesn't feel like work. It feels like and, some days it's still gonna suck, but you enjoy it." And my son's like, "Great, professional video gamer." I'm like, "Shut up." But the point is I think it is hard, like, social media will mess with your head, and then hyper growth companies will mess and it doesn't mean don't go work at a hyper growth company, you'll find lots of interesting learnings and things that you could do, but that comparison game is dangerous, and you really do need friends and family and community. I read this I rented the got this book from the library recently called Designing Your Life, and it's really like a bunch of designers who design product, and then they say, "Apply it to your life." And here's all the elements. You have to decide how big or little you want them. And I was like, oh, this is fun. I've never actually taken the time to think about how I want to spend my time, like in a purposeful way. And I was like, I'm 50. And this is the first time I've ever thought, how do I spend my time in a purposeful way? And it's really helping me rethink how I want to spend my time. And I only work part-time now. I only work at Electric 3 days a week. So I'm really being purposeful about those other 4 days a week and what I do. So it's been interesting.
Man, that's it's such a great story. Thank you for sharing with us. I do want to talk about, you left Meta what, 2023, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So 2021, 2022, right? And let's actually go back to like kind of like COVID and ramping. So Meta hired like fucking crazy. Like the joke that I used to say was like, tech was drunk on hiring. Well, and then, 2021, 2022 hit, and then all of a sudden, like, it's like you're at the club and they flip the lights on at 4 o'clock in the morning. You're like, oh my God, like what is going on here? And then you guys had to get sober really quick, right? And that looked like layoffs and a lot of layoffs. And it looked like a lot of shit talking in the community about your strategy, right? Because it was like, oh, like they don't care about people. They're just hiring and firing. Like Mark doesn't care about people. You were there. What actually happened? Like, what's the internal narrative?
We were sloppy. Okay, so COVID hit and Mark's like, now more than ever, our tools have to help connect the world. So the first couple months of COVID, from a work perspective, not a life perspective, from a work perspective, were amazing. We were working longer hours. We were trying to bootstrap teams that would help ma and pa stores around the world come online because they usually just had a presence in a physical store, in a storefront. So, like, if you're like some small store in Italy, which was getting decimated by COVID, we're like, we're going to get them online. So we set up all these free tools and this free software and like free ads credits to get them online. And that was Mark's. And we were all like so motivated and so excited. He's like, that means more resources. So that product, that team went from like 500 people to like 5,000 people in, I don't know, a year. And, but we just kept iterating and couldn't find product market fit. And so then Mark's like, well, we need this for ads so ads can boost more revenue. And WhatsApp, you only have 500 engineers. You should have 1,000 so you could do 10 projects at once instead of 2, and that wasn't WhatsApp's way of doing things, and that wasn't Instagram's way of doing things. They did things in a more curated way, whereas Mark would keep saying, "Hey, Nolan, if I give you 5,000 more headcount, what other things can you do? Kelli, if you're leading Messenger and I gave you 2,000 more, what could you do?" So the exercises were always, "Give me a 20% plan, give me a 40% plan. What could those look like?" And if you could promise you could do all these things, you would get the headcount. It was like an arms race. It was crazy. And all of us on our side, especially on the recruiting side, this one leader in recruiting was like, we're doing too much. Because what we started to see on the HRBP side was too many redundancies, too many of the same teams popping up in different orgs. And we're like, why do we need this team here when we have it here? But no one was talking anymore. We were getting too big and people were just really focused on achieving these Mark goals. They weren't doing it, in my opinion, to screw with the other teams. They weren't sitting there saying, this team sucks, so we're going to bootstrap our own. That happened in small increments, but it was more, we think we can get there faster and really help our product to grow. And then COVID was over. During COVID, everyone used Facebook. Our number shot up, WhatsApp usage shot up, Instagram, because everyone was stuck at home. They're just doom scrolling, texting, connecting. And then COVID was over. People left their homes. Usage skyrocket or shot down. No one was using it anymore because they're like, I can go outside, I can talk to people. I don't want to be trapped, to this tethered to this, doom scrolling tool anymore. And so then our usage went down, our ad revenue went down, coupled with Apple saying, you don't get to do ad targeting anymore. And that was screwing with our ads. And so Mark, and I would say there was another influence, which is Mark and a bunch of these CEOs from different companies, they all chat on WhatsApp together and they like share a bunch of best practices and stuff. And whenever they would hire, like you would see us hire, if we were hiring, then they'd start hiring. Everyone was a fast follower. And then some people were saying, let's just start tightening our belts a little bit. So Mark was like, okay, let's tighten our belts a little bit. I'm not saying he's a fast follower, but they all sort of agreed with each other. It was really weird, the sort of group think you would see across some of these teams. And I don't even know who the CEOs were. I have an idea, but I don't know exactly who they were. And then our numbers just weren't doing well. And we've been saying for a while, we've got a fat middle. Like we were too many layers, too many managers. So Mark sat down and he said, let's find efficiencies. So he set the CTO up, Shrep at the time, to be like, go find efficiencies that you could make in the company. Are there eng efficiencies? Can we code faster? Can we ship faster? Can we eliminate a bunch of sloppy code? So then everyone started thinking through efficiencies. And so they started asking HRBPs, what efficiencies do you need? And I was like, well, in order to ship product, you actually don't need these two huge teams that are 1,000 and 3,000 people each. If you're going to do this, then you actually don't need these. So we started having those conversations. And Mark's like, okay, we're going to do a riff. We've got too many people and we could be tighter and we need our revenue to be tighter. And he also, albeit, you know, took some of his lead from WhatsApp. WhatsApp was very few people, very focused, 2 billion users. And the two guys who founded it, Brian and Jan, were like, when we bought them, 60 people. 60 people already 1 billion users. And of those 60 people, 20 were ops, like building out the stuff in community. Only like 30 were engineers. And so Mark really was influenced a lot by Jan and Brian's focus, lean teams, high quality teams, not a lot of managers. And Jan and Brian didn't allow any Facebook groups. They viewed all that as noise. Mark started seeing that a lot of the stuff that we thought was core culture was now counterculture. It was slowing us down. We would have, Black Lives Matters groups, and we would talk about it in town halls, and people would say, well, what about Blue Lives Matter? And then we'd have to address that. So all this like death by 1,000 paper cuts of other topics that weren't core to building product had already seeped its way into our culture, and it was making work 30% less efficient, 40% less efficient than what we could be, and we were bloated and fat. And so we shut down, I want to say like 8,000 recs, rescinded a couple thousand offers, and then just riffed. And let's be clear, some of the riff was needed because there were redundancy in roles, but also we were a company that was afraid of, and I'm just going to say it, they kept saying like, we don't want our Jason Damore moment. Google had their Jason Damore moment. They're like, we have to investigate everything. So if some rando came to me and said, hey, I'm being discriminated against, I'll be like, on what grounds? I don't know. I'm just being discriminated by who? Well, maybe my boss kind of picking on me. I'm like, okay, it sounds like your boss is giving you feedback. But if the minute someone said discriminated against, I'd have to call the employee relations team and the investigators would come in. And what should have been a normal, like, 2-month PIP turned into an investigation in a year-long process. And so some of this was Mark just getting frustrated, saying, we're going to just do a reckoning and just take things out and just move faster. And so we screwed up. We hired way too many people because it was an arms race. He saw other people doing it. Well, then of course we had to do it and we didn't need to. We just started getting inefficient. We started moving slower. And all of our engagement surveys said that. So he would see that, ask people what they should do differently, and that's what sort of led to it, but he made the call, and I don't disagree with what he did. I think it was the right thing. I'm just pissed that we got there in the first place. We didn't have to get there. We didn't need to.
Yeah, I don't know about like, the other side to this is I think there's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking on, what happened, and it's really easy to like, especially from the outside, to shit on Facebook Meta. Like it's just they're a huge company, and so it's really easy to do that. But if you go back to that time, and God forbid we like try and put ourselves into Mark's shoes, you're seeing like these numbers go up, and you're thinking your constraint is just more people to build more products.
He had great intention when he was doing it.
Exactly.
Like when we worked on that product, I just remember they would meet every morning at 8 a.m. and every night at 7 p.m. These teams would meet and do these, and they were doing it because they wanted to bring mom and pop businesses online because they knew COVID was killing their business and starving them. And Mark's like, we're going to help them put food on the table. And a lot of people say, Baz, you drink the Kool-Aid. I drank it. I believed it. And the teams who were building those products believed it. So we were bulking up across the shop to make everything better for people. It's just then post COVID, everything took a big hit. And then the numbers didn't match up again. We were getting criticized left and right. And the thing about Mark is he usually is the smartest person in the room. He can see things that other people can't see. And so we were getting too big and it was crazy. And I would say the year before the riff, we're like, this is a lot. because the recruiting team, some of those recruiters, you know what their, like, quarterly goal was? 1 hire. Because we had, like, it's ridiculous. We had, like, a 5,000 person recruiting team, and we just needed to throw numbers at it to hit the plan, but yeah, I would say it got you're right, you could Monday morning quarterback it, but internally, we knew we were getting a little bloated. The numbers were big, recruiting couldn't hit the numbers, and they were working their butts off, and it was a great recruiting team, to be honest with you.
What does Monday morning quarterbacking mean if I'm a listener? Like, what is that?
It means, sitting in the cheap seats to where you don't actually know what's going on and criticizing
It's like, yeah,
with hindsight, with
hindsight being 2020. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, with hindsight. And so then Baz, then the other piece of criticism is it wasn't just one riff, it was like 3 over,
3, you're right.
yeah, over a period of, call it, like 6 to 9 months.
First one was recruiting, and that was a big one because Mark wanted to take some of the money and show the gains. He wanted to take some money off the table and show the board and people, "Look, we're actually gonna do this." Once you riffed recruiting, because then we had headcount plans for what we thought we were gonna hire. So then we cut the business, and the way we cut the business was what's priority work, what's not priority work, and we cut stuff that really people felt passionate about, like the social work and the DEI work and actually, the DEI was in the 3rd chunk, but they got slashed pretty big as well during that process. So we cut things that we thought didn't hurt. Like, I'll give you an example. One of the things that cut is we had a 30-person team just to make the buildings pretty. Artists, artists in residence who came in and installed beautiful installations, and they had, like, this huge multi-million-dollar budget every year. When they came to me and they're like, "Baz, my budget got cut." I was like, "People are losing their jobs." It's hard for me to care too much about the art budget, even though these people were passionate and wonderful, like some of the most crazy, interesting people I'd ever met. So they did that because they thought that cut, this second cut, which was the biggest one, would be enough. And that was October 2023 or October 2022. Thought we were done. And then they fast forward, and Mark said at the time, "Well, we don't know we're gonna be done. Right now, we're correcting mainly recs." We cut a lot of recs. We shut down, like, I think 10,000 recs, rescinded a couple thousand offers, and then did our first cut. And that first cut, we were loath to call it a performance cut. Legal was like, "You can't call it a performance cut," and it wasn't a pure performance cut. There were multiple factors that fed into it. Performance was definitely a factor. I'm like, we could have cut more if we needed to, because from a performance perspective, we hadn't been keeping the bar high because we were legally afraid of our own shadow, to be honest with you. Then when they were doing the final cut, I was already on my way out and I wasn't paying as much attention. But I know by then Mark was like, "We still have too many layers. We could still get more efficient." And by then, every other company was doing it. And so many companies were idolizing the way Facebook did it. Because Mark actually wrote a post afterward, and he's like, "We didn't wanna do, like, this was an error, like, we screwed up, that's why we had to do this. These are awesome employees." Mark did this actually pretty wonderful post. I got calls from my friends at LinkedIn and calls from my friends at Google and calls from my friends at Amazon. "Baz, tell me what you did it. Tell me what your process was to do it, because 'cause we're gonna copy it here." So by then, we were getting all this great press about how nice our how what a great riff we had. And so I think Mark felt a little motivated by that and said we kind of went conservative the first time because we didn't want to cut too much. But then we came out the other end and we're like, we can actually afford to go leaner and we don't need as many managers and we don't need as, we reduced the number of managers. We kept senior ICs. That's really what we wanted, senior ICs. And we were going to stay away from a lot of the new college grads and just go with more seasoned people. And it worked out well to the point, yeah, I helped 3 other companies. I just walked them through our process and they're like, "We're gonna copy some of this stuff." And so now they're hiring like crazy. A lot of the recruiters they laid off, they ended up rehiring back because now the company's doing so well. But it's funny now when I look at how Facebook is operating, killing all the DEI, killing a lot of the internal community groups and saying, "Get back to work." It's very WhatsApp. It's very, and not that WhatsApp was mean, WhatsApp was just focused. And so I really do think Mark learned a lot from some of the other leaders in the company and was like, what actually is gonna work? We need to get back to brass tacks and we need to get back to just shipping high quality products. So I have a feeling they won't do more lay. I think One of the things I've always liked about Mark and the leadership team there, because most of the leaders are still consistently there, they learn from their mistakes and they try not to repeat things. And so I think that was not that it helped anyone who got laid off, but that was a lesson learned. I don't really see that happening again. I see small things happening again, small corrections, but I think they're gonna be far more thoughtful about it now because they don't need big teams to deliver on the stuff they're building on. WhatsApp's proved that over and over again.
Especially now with, like, team dynamics and AI and stuff like that. I mean, I really appreciate you sharing the insights. The last thing I wanna cover with you is just this notion of, like, the DEI stuff, specifically the 2 things you mentioned, which I tend to strongly agree with, which is number 1, you they, like, you, like, can't fire people sometimes because you're worried about retribution, and people actually know how to play the game. Right? Like, at big companies, like, I have friends who work in big companies, and they know if you say these, like, couple words, it's, like, immediately, like, "Nope, like, we gotta draw this out a lot further." And then the other one is around the resource groups, and I've always had in it because it's like you can create a resource group for anything, and then if the resource group, like, wants you to focus on something and you guys don't focus on that thing, then all of a sudden like you're some sort of like working against the resource group, which then can brand you in a negative light. What's your learning from that era?
Sort of with the resource groups first, like, resource groups at Facebook originally started off as fun. A Frisbee group, a knitting group, like, so long as there were 3 of you, you guys get a $1,500 budget a year to go play Frisbee.
That's a lot of yarn.
Yeah.
It's a lot of yarn.
I could knit, I could show you my needlepoint. And so I love that because it was about community building, which was very in line with what Facebook's mission was. We wanna build community, we want people to be happy and work with their coworkers. And then it became more of a mission of we wanna support Black communities and Asian communities and women at communities, and frankly, those groups were actually quite helpful. People found solidarity, they found support, they found coaching and mentoring. They became really great de facto mentoring groups and safety groups, and they're like, "Oh, you think this? I'm gonna go try that here." And actually, they all started off with such great intent. What ended up happening is I remember this conversation with this one woman one time when George Floyd was happening, and she was a very seasoned leader. She's wonderful and very active in the Black at group. Every time someone wanted to talk about the George Floyd one, they would ask her, and she's like, "Baz, I have a day job, yet I'm being asked to spend 30% of my time every week doing this." And first of all, it breaks my heart. It's very draining. And and then I have to educate people about it, and then I have to answer questions. And she goes, "I wanna do it. It's just hard. Sometimes I just wanna do work." And what ended up happening and then we had this one group who were like, "Well, blue lives matter. What are you saying? Cops don't matter, Baz? That's bullshit. We can start our own blue lives group." And then we're spending all of our time policing this random 1% of the population instead of focusing on the 99% who care about these issues, but also just wanna come to work to do great work. And it became a huge distraction to the population. And they were still very good conversations that were happening, but it wasn't you could never really win. Like, the ERGs, you could win because you could give people support and you could give coaching and, like, some of our wins with the ERGs were awesome, like, we got funding and we were telling people in this one group, "You guys can go get 2 hours of coaching from an executive coach every quarter if you want," and it we tied it back to their performance, and it really helped unlock them. So when you could do stuff like that, it's fantastic, but when it's causing concern in the company and it's taking you away from the job, and it's really interesting because several groups really leaned I had some leaders who are like, "Baz, I'll post stuff. I'm turning off all comments because 'cause I'm not engaging in this because we have real work to do." And other leaders would spend weeks just engaging in the comments. So for me, it's I think DEI plays a very, very, very important role in the workplace, and for that to be turned off and I actually don't think it was fully turned off. I don't know all the details of what happened at Facebook, 'cause it happened after I left. To me, those initiatives were really great initiatives, and they really helped people, and we've got more better leaders now who are diverse than we would have before because we spent the time on it, but we could have done it in a way that was a little more targeted. Like, we boiled the ocean. At Facebook, we always boiled the ocean. Like, let's do everything to the 100th degree. Or we could just do things to 90%, nail the things that really move the needle, and then just focus on the work. That's how I looked at it.
That's what, just to wrap a bow around the DEI, that was my last question as well, and I think we talked about this in another segment, Nolan, is just as a rational person, I don't know how you can go from 0 to 100 or 100 to 0. I don't know how anyone can disagree with, it's really important, we need to do it, we need to make sure it's productive and it's working and we're paying attention, and it can spiral out of control and become completely distracting and just not helpful and actually backfire, you know, across the original intent. I don't know how you can't see that both those things are true.
Well, it's hard because, it's to Baz's point, it's like one group can make another group feel like they're othered. And so when you are only focusing, especially like with immutable traits, it's like, well, what about these people and what about them? And then it's just an escalation. And so where, like, how you draw those lines, I think it worked initially because people feel intent, right? And they know the intent is good. But once the next person asks a very logical, reasonable question, which is like, what about me and my group? And we have to go, well, like, we did it over here, we got to do it over there.
So I get it. So it's easier just to stop it 100%. I guess what I'm saying
Yeah.
is are there things we can experiment with or things we can try or say or do that we haven't done?
That's, I think, where we are. I think that's what we're trying to figure out right now, and people just, like, can't.
I think there's a couple of tried and true practices that work very well. Like, the Rooney Rule works incredibly well. Data proves over and over again it does. And maybe more focus on empathy versus, like, there was so much argument, there was so much time. I got calls from our ER team all the time who just triaged internal chat groups. Okay, Baz, this happened. This is your engineer. Go talk to him. Like, I'm not gonna fucking go talk to him. Tell him that stuff's not allowed. Set up better moderator rules so that we could eliminate a lot of this intervention. Like, make it about respect. And if you can't be respectful, you get kicked out of the group. So we had to tighten up those things. And then it went from like this many interactions, it dropped by like 50% where we had to intervene. But if you can't be respectful of your coworkers, you don't get to work at the company. It should be that basic.
Yeah. Well, Baz, I mean, Kelly and I have been doing this for a couple of years now. This is one of my favorite conversations we've ever had. Your level of candor is like unmatched. And I think anybody who listening to this can like feel that viscerally. And so like, me taking away from this conversation is like, I want to be more like you.
You're probably gonna get a lot of reach outs. This was incredible. This was incredible, Bev. Thank you for making the time.
You guys will be my only one because you guys are the only 2 people I'm comfortable doing this. I was so s like, I didn't sleep last night. I was like, "Oh my god, they're not gonna."
Oh my god. We gotta have you back because we didn't even get to talk about your transition to venture capital from all this. Like, that's a conversation I really love to have. So,
I'm loving these crypto founders. They're really cute.
and I'm gonna pull a Christine Ellis on you. You can't say no. You're fucking coming back. You're not gonna say no. And
That is such a Christine move.
if you can't see me, we're rudely pointing in the camera.
You guys are awesome. Thanks for making me feel so comfortable. I really appreciate it, and thanks for having me on. That's been a lot of fun.
All right. Thanks all.
That was a blast.
Thanks, guys.
HR Heretics is a podcast from Turpentine, the network behind Econ 102, Moment of Zen, and Turpentine VC. Subscribe, 5 stars, share it on Apple, YouTube, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts, all the things.